We're in the middle of a series called AMPLIFY. And in the first podcast episode, we talked about this idea of, are you amplifying the wrong voice inside your head and thereby undercutting your performance? And we talked about several ways that you can know if you're amplifying the wrong voice in your head. Today, I want to talk to you about having no voice. In other words, you're in that season where you have a voice and you have influence, but you're not using it as in a positive, productive way to further impact your sphere of influence. You're not encouraging others. You're not speaking up and amplifying the level of the voice that you need to have for other people. And I've got another embarrassing DJ story to tell you. I did do well as a DJ and running soundboards and things like that, but there were some moments that happened that I wasn't so proud of. And one of them I call my dead air story. And I was going into a segment. I was DJing at a radio station several years ago, and we were coming into a segment where we ran commercial-free music. And so I did a great intro to that segment, at least what I thought was a great intro, and talked about how we're going to have 25 minutes of nonstop music. And when I shut down my level and hit play on the first song that was going to lead out in that segment, I was celebrating what I thought was a great intro and thinking about that. And then I noticed that in my monitors that no sound was coming out. We basically had dead air on the radio and across the airwaves. And I looked at the level of the soundboard, and I had not raised the level of the music. I had definitely taken down my microphone, but had not raised the sound and raised the level of the music that was supposed to be playing to lead off this incredible segment that was going to be for our listeners. And so I immediately jumped to the board, raised the level up, and I think people were kind of wondering what happened. We weren't hearing anything, and then suddenly we're in the middle of the song. And it was only a few seconds, but I think in life sometimes we can do that. We can take a step back, and we have a voice, and we have influence, and we have that metaphorical song in our lives to be able to sing to other people. But we're not using that in the right way. And God's given those opportunities and given us things and a voice and words to say, but we're not using that to actually speak to other people. And so I really want to encourage you this week to think about that. Are you using your voice to make a positive and productive difference in the lives of other people? Or are you being silent and you've got that level down on the soundboard and you're not amplifying that voice? And it essentially is dead air because you're not using the moments and the opportunities that you have and using your voice. And I want to give you a few ways to find that voice, about 4 or 5 things that I wrote down around this. And I think the first thing is that we have to reject the notion that we have nothing to say. Reject the notion that you have nothing to say and that you don't have a voice. And I think sometimes people can think, well, other people have a voice or other people have leadership opportunities and other people have things to say, but I don't really have anything meaningful to say, so I'm not going to say anything. And you have to reject that notion. You have things to say. God has put people in your life and given you moments where you need to say things and you need to speak up and you need to encourage them. So I think the first step is, realizing that you do have a voice and reject this notion that you don't have a voice. I think the second thing is that to find your voice is survey the landscape. And that would be the second point. Survey the landscape. What are the needs of the people around you? What do you see in their lives? What do they need from you? Why has God put those people in your life? And survey the landscape of what are those needs? And that leads into the third point. Reflect on the gifts, talents, and strengths that you've been given. Because there are probably situations and moments and people who have needs that are in your life that you run into. And it may just be a casual meeting in a coffee shop, or it may be the person in the cubicle next to you, or it may be somebody on a Zoom call or a Teams call that's there. But they're in your life for a reason. And you've been given certain strengths and certain gifts and talents that can speak to them. And you can speak from that place of experience and that place that, only you can reach them if you use your voice. And I think in finding our voice, when we look inside and look at the strengths and talents and gifts that we've been given, we find a voice of experience that we can speak from. Which leads to the fourth thing, and it's something that is a foundational, I think, for me and all of the other points that I'm going to give you, is to pray that God will give you His words and His voice and amplify that in and through you. There may be things that I feel like I want to say, and those may be top of mind, but they may not be the right thing to say. And when I enter a setting, whether I'm speaking to a group, speaking on this podcast, speaking to somebody one-on-one and coaching, or maybe it's just a friend, I often pray and, to make sure that it's not my words that are coming through, but it's the words that God has given me to speak to that person based on their need. And I think that's a foundational piece, is to make sure that you're speaking those right words that are going to encourage them. And I always feel that God has put those people in those moments and those situations and given those to me and put me in those situations. And so I want to make sure that I'm speaking the right words to them, and I pray for wisdom around that. And I think that's foundational to some of the points. But if you want to really find your voice, He created you, and He's going to give you the wisdom to speak. And we have to take a step back sometimes of the things that we really want to speak and make sure those align with the words that He wants us to speak to them in that moment. And that leads to a fifth thing. I think I really want to encourage you to awaken to and embrace the opportunities that are right in front of you. If you've taken an internal assessment of strengths, gifts, and talents, if you've prayed for wisdom in those moments, if you've surveyed the landscape to understand that, the needs of people and the people that are there, and you realize that you do have a voice, awaken to that and embrace the opportunity to speak up, to encourage a friend, to breathe life into somebody's dream, to give feedback to somebody maybe that you're leading that would really allow them to leverage their strengths in a powerful and purposeful way. Those are all examples of how we can embrace and step into those moments to encourage people to breathe life into their dreams and to really speak the words that God has given us. And so I think those are some important things to think about as you think about finding your voice. But the idea is there. I mean, we have to make sure that we realize that we do have a voice. You do have a voice. And you need to use that. And there are people who are waiting on you to lead them, to influence them, and to encourage them. And if there's dead air, just like in that DJ story I told, if there's dead air and you haven't amplified the level of the voice that they need to hear, they're not going to hear it. And they're going to miss the opportunity and miss the moment. And you're going to miss the moment to speak into their lives and to make a powerful and purposeful and productive impact within your sphere of influence and within their life. So just some thoughts today about no voice and making sure that we find the right voice and find our voice to not have dead air, but to speak into the lives of the people that have been brought to us and the people that God has placed in your life. And as always, let's make the most of the moments in our lives.